My wife once asked me whether accidental death paid more than natural death. At the time, I laughed. That is the part I remember most clearly, not the question, not the way Rachel avoided my eyes when she asked it. I remember my own laugh, tired and trusting, as if the woman sitting across from me could never be dangerous. My name is William Mercer. I was 36 then, an operations manager for a regional logistics company outside Columbus. My days usually began before sunrise and ended after dinner. I solved delayed shipments, staffing shortages, damaged inventory, and whatever other crisis had found my phone before breakfast. I was not emotional by nature. I believed most problems became manageable once you stopped panicking and started paying attention. Rachel and I had been married 6 years. We had no children. From the outside, our life looked polished and complete. A 3-bedroom house in a quiet subdivision, 2 reliable cars, comfortable vacations, and photographs Rachel posted online every few weeks to remind people we were happy. People believed those pictures. So did I. Rachel was beautiful in the effortless way that made strangers remember her. She could enter a room, learn everyone's name, and leave with 3 new invitations. She had spent most of our marriage figuring out what she wanted to do professionally. There had been an online boutique, a real estate course, a wellness page, and plans for a decorating business that never moved beyond a logo. I paid for all of it. I paid the mortgage, insurance, utilities, vehicles, groceries, dinners, clothes, weekend trips, and every new beginning she abandoned. I never demanded receipts. I never asked her to prove she was trying. I thought support was part of marriage and trust was not something you rationed. During our 6th year, the warmth between us thinned. Rachel stopped touching my shoulder when she passed behind me. She began taking her phone into the bathroom. My questions irritated her. My presence seemed to interrupt private thoughts she had no intention of sharing. When I asked whether something was wrong, she smiled without warmth and said I was imagining distance because I worked too much. I accepted that explanation because it blamed me. Then came the financial questions. Did my employer provide a death benefit? Was the mortgage insured? Would the house transfer automatically if something happened to me? How long did life insurance claims take? She asked casually, usually while scrolling through her phone. I told myself she was anxious about the future. I even felt grateful that she cared enough to plan for emergencies. One night, I sat at my desk looking at a photograph from our 3rd anniversary. Rachel was laughing against my shoulder, and I remembered thinking I would do anything to protect the life we had built. I still feel the irony of that memory. A week later, after several break-ins in nearby homes, I installed discreet security cameras throughout ours. I did it quietly because I was still testing the system and knew Rachel hated visible equipment. I thought danger arrived through broken glass, forced locks, and unfamiliar footsteps in the dark. I was wrong. I installed those cameras to protect our home from strangers. I never imagined the most dangerous person. Inside, it already had a key. The system was simple but thorough. 4 motion-triggered cameras covered the front entrance, back hallway, living room, and kitchen. Each recording uploaded automatically to an encrypted cloud account that only I could access. The lenses were small enough to disappear among smoke detectors and shelving. I had planned to show Rachel everything that Saturday, after I finished testing the notifications. On Wednesday evening, I was still at the office when my phone vibrated. Motion detected, living room. I expected a delivery driver at the window, maybe Rachel carrying laundry through the room. I opened the live feed without thinking. She was sitting on the couch with one leg folded beneath her, phone pressed to her ear. The television was off. Her voice was low, intimate. At first, I assumed she was talking to a friend. Then she said my name. William always gets home around 6:30 on Mondays. My hand stopped above the keyboard. A man's voice answered faintly through the speaker. I could not hear every word, but I heard enough to understand that Rachel was not discussing dinner. "I'll leave the back door unlocked," she said. "You come in after 5, stay behind the wall near the living room. He always drops his bag by the chair." There was a pause. Rachel listened, then sighed as if the man on the other end had asked an inconvenient question. "No gun, I told you. It has to look like a burglary." My office seemed to lose all sound. The ventilation, phones, traffic beyond the window, everything disappeared beneath the blood pounding in my ears. Rachel continued calmly. "You get behind him and choke him. I'll grab his arms if he fights. Once he stops moving, we mess up the room and take the laptop. The police will think he surprised someone." The man asked something else. "Yes, Anthony, the policy is active, I checked." She spoke about my death the way I spoke about delivery schedules, sequence, timing, contingencies. She said the house would pass to her. She mentioned our joint savings. She estimated how long the insurance company might investigate before paying. Then she laughed. It was a small laugh, almost affectionate. That sound hurt more than the plan. I stopped the recording and sat motionless. Every strange question from the previous months arranged itself into a single answer. The insurance, the mortgage, her impatience, the phone she guarded, the photographs she posted while calculating what my body was worth. My first impulse was to call her. I wanted to hear her panic. I wanted to force her to explain how 6 years of marriage had become an unlocked door and a stranger's arm around my throat. Then training replaced emotion. Not military training, nothing dramatic, years of managing emergencies. Do not alert the cause of the problem before you understand the whole failure. If Rachel knew about the camera, she could erase messages, warn Anthony, change the date, or choose a place where no one would see. I downloaded the clip to an external drive, a private cloud folder, and a new email account. Then I called a criminal attorney whose firm had once handled an employee case for my company. I told him exactly what I had. "Call the police now," he said. "Do not confront either of them." I called. 2 officers met me in the office parking lot. They watched the recording, took a report, and treated me seriously. But they explained that recorded planning, without supporting evidence or an overt act, might not produce an immediate arrest. They advised me not to return home alone and promised to forward the report to detectives. I thanked them. Then I sat in my car beneath the yellow parking lights, trying to understand that my safest place was now anywhere Rachel was not. My phone lit up. "Rachel, miss you. Come home soon." I stared at the message until the screen went dark. I did not reply. I was already thinking about Monday. I made one decision before leaving that parking lot. I would not run, and I would not confront her. Rachel and Anthony wanted Monday. I would give them Monday exactly as they had designed it. Same house, same unlocked door, same arrival time. The difference was that every second would be recorded, witnessed, and reported before it happened. The days between Wednesday and Monday felt unreal. I returned home that night. Rachel met me in the kitchen, kissed my cheek, and complained that dinner had gone cold. I apologized for being late. I ate across from the woman who had spent part of her afternoon discussing how to stop me from breathing. She asked whether I was tired. "Long day," I said. That became my explanation for everything. I watched television beside her. I slept in the same bed. I listened to her breathe in the darkness while wondering how often Anthony had occupied her thoughts there. Every ordinary gesture became grotesque. I did not let any of it show. During the day, I built the net. The first person I called was Ethan Cole, a former Army medic who now managed emergency training for a manufacturing plant. The second was Luis Ortega, an off-duty security supervisor who had spent years restraining violent people without losing control himself. The third was Caleb Reed, my next-door neighbor and oldest friend. I met them separately. I played the recording without warning them what they were about to hear. Ethan went silent. Luis asked me to replay Rachel's instructions. Caleb stood so quickly his chair struck the wall. "We go there tonight," he said. "No," I answered. "That gives them room to lie." I explained the rule to each man. This was not punishment. No ambush, no beating, no heroics. They would remain out of sight until Anthony attacked. Once contact occurred, they would separate us, restrain him, and stop. Rachel would not be touched unless she physically assisted. I needed the truth preserved, not contaminated by revenge. I updated the detective assigned to my report and provided Monday's time. He warned me that the plan was dangerous and urged me to stay elsewhere. I understood. I also knew Rachel could deny intention forever unless the evidence showed action. We arranged a priority emergency alert through my phone. One press would transmit my location and open a call. My attorney received the original recording, the police report, camera access, and instructions to release everything if I failed to confirm my safety by 7 o'clock Monday. Then I protected what remained of my life. I moved personal savings from an account Rachel could access into one in my name alone. I copied policy documents, photographs, financial records, and saved statements showing every major purchase. I made no visible changes. I wanted her confident. On Saturday, she sent me a message from upstairs. Planning something nice for Monday. Be home by 6:30. I read it twice. She had disguised my execution as a romantic dinner. Looking forward to it, I replied. Sunday night, every camera was active. My friends knew their positions. Caleb would watch from his house. Ethan and Lewis would wait in a van around the corner until Caleb signaled that Anthony had entered. Rachel climbed into bed wearing the perfume she used when we first met. She curled toward me and rested her hand on my chest. For one dangerous second, grief nearly exposed me. Then I remembered her voice saying, "I'll grab his arms if he fights." She fell asleep. I remained awake until dawn, listening to the clock divide the final night of our marriage into smaller and smaller pieces. By Monday afternoon, everyone was ready. At 6:24, I parked outside my own house. My hands were steady. The emergency device sat beneath my jacket. Through the front window, I saw the living room lamp glowing. I stayed in the car for 4 minutes, memorizing the person I had been before I opened that door. Then I stepped out. I walked through the front door at 6:28. Rachel appeared from the kitchen before I removed my jacket. She wore a dark green blouse and the smile she used in photographs, carefully shaped, empty around the eyes. "You're early," she said. 2 minutes. She kissed my cheek. Her lips were cold. "I need your help with something in the living room." I set my work bag beside the chair, exactly where she had told Anthony I would. As I followed her through the hallway, I glanced toward the back door. It was ajar, with a thin strip of evening light along the frame. Rachel noticed. "I brought groceries in earlier. I must not have closed it." I nodded and entered the living room. For half a second, nothing happened. Then Anthony came from behind the wall. His forearm struck across my throat. His other hand locked behind my head, and his full weight drove me backward. He moved without hesitation, like a man completing an agreed task. I pressed the emergency device beneath my jacket. It vibrated once against my ribs. Anthony dragged me backward. Pressure closed around my neck, sharp and immediate. I planted my feet and turned enough to protect my airway, but I did not break free. I needed the cameras to capture what came next. Rachel did not scream. She did not reach for her phone. She stepped forward and seized my right wrist with both hands. That was the moment the last surviving piece of my marriage died. Until then, some irrational part of me had believed she might stop it. Perhaps she would see my face and remember who I had been to her. Instead, she pulled my arm away from Anthony's grip. "Hold him," he grunted. "I am," she answered. I looked directly at her. Her face was focused, almost clinical. She watched my resistance, calculating whether Anthony needed more help. Then something fractured in her expression. She realized I was not panicking. I was studying her with a calm she could not explain. I forced out 6 words. "You should have checked for cameras." Her hands loosened. The front door burst open. Ethan tore Anthony's arm from my throat while Caleb drove into his side. Lewis pulled Rachel away as Anthony hit the carpet, rolled, and swung. Ethan pinned Anthony's shoulder while Lewis secured one wrist. Once Anthony was restrained, they moved back. I remained on one knee, pulling air into my lungs. Rachel collapsed beside the couch. "Oh my God," she cried. "William, I didn't know, he just came in, I was trying to pull you away." She had changed the story before my breathing steadied. Anthony twisted toward the door. "They set me up, she told me to come." Rachel stared at him. "I never told you anything." Their loyalty lasted less than 30 seconds. I stood and pointed toward the upper corner of the room. The camera's status light blinked. Rachel followed my finger. Her crying stopped. Police arrived minutes later, separated everyone, and placed Anthony and Rachel in handcuffs while officers examined my neck and Caleb's face. Rachel repeated that she had tried to help me. Anthony claimed he had been invited into the house and attacked without cause. I gave the lead officer a drive and the cloud access information. I listed what the files contained: Wednesday's planning conversation, Anthony entering through the unlocked door, Rachel directing him to his hiding place, the attack, her hands restraining my wrist, and my police report from 4 days earlier. The officers reviewed the footage inside a patrol vehicle. When they returned, their tone had changed. Rachel was arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, aggravated assault, and related offenses. Anthony faced attempted murder, consp. racy burglary, and aggravated assault. My friends and I were questioned separately. The footage showed they entered only after the attack began and stopped once Anthony was restrained. Hours later, an officer told me I was free to go. Rachel sat in the back of a police vehicle. As it pulled away, she turned toward the window and looked at me. I did not look away. I felt no triumph, only the quiet recognition that the worst was over. Everything she had planned to take from me still belonged to me. The months after the arrests were quieter than I expected. I had imagined constant drama, calls, threats, public scenes, some final attempt by Rachel to regain control. Instead, the legal system moved with slow, impersonal weight. Hearings were scheduled, evidence cataloged, and motions filed in language that made attempted murder sound administrative. I attended every proceeding required of me. I met with prosecutors, answered questions, and filed for divorce. Rachel's family asked me to remember the woman I married. Neither of them asked why she had held my arm while I was being strangled. Rachel wrote 3 letters before trial. The first blamed Anthony and said he had turned private fantasies into reality. The second claimed she panicked and never intended for me to die. The third was different, softer. She asked whether any part of our marriage had been real to me. She wrote that people do terrible things when they feel invisible and wanted me to understand what had driven her there. I forwarded every letter to my attorney. Each one became evidence. At trial, the prosecution presented the case in chronological order. The jury first heard Rachel asking Anthony whether he understood the plan. Then they heard her explain my work schedule, the unlocked back door, his hiding position, the chokehold, the staged burglary, the insurance, and the savings. Her voice was calm. That mattered. There was no fear in it, no pressure, no hesitation. She corrected Anthony, warned him not to bring a weapon, and laughed when he asked whether I might fight harder than expected. Then the jury watched Monday. They saw Anthony enter through the back door. They saw Rachel lead him behind the wall. They saw her greet me, kiss my cheek, and guide me into the room. They saw Anthony attack. They saw Rachel take my wrist. No defense argument survived the footage. Anthony tried to negotiate a plea by blaming Rachel. Rachel's attorneys suggested Anthony had acted beyond her intention. Their stories collided with each other and then collapsed against the recording. The loyalty that had seemed strong enough to kill me disappeared as soon as prison became real. I testified on the final day. The prosecutor asked what I understood when I heard the first recording. That my wife believed I was worth more dead than alive, I said. I described the police report, the cameras, the emergency alert, and the reason my friends waited until the assault began. I did not call Rachel evil. I did not call Anthony a monster. I had learned that facts delivered calmly could be more damaging than anger. Before I stepped down, I was allowed to address the court. She did not lose control for a single moment, I said. She planned my death because she calculated that my life was worth more to her as an insurance payment than as a marriage. I returned to my seat without looking at her. The jury convicted both of them on every major charge. The judge cited premeditation, financial motive, coordinated preparation, and the clarity of the recordings before imposing sentences near the upper range permitted. Rachel did not collapse when the verdict was read. She seemed to deflate slowly, as if the future she had imagined was leaking out of her one breath at a time. Outside, my attorney shook my hand. The sky was ordinary. Cars moved along the street. People entered restaurants and complained about traffic. The world had not paused for what nearly happened to me. I stood on the courthouse steps and breathed. Rachel had spent months planning how to end my life. I had spent those same months learning how to take it back. I sold the house after the divorce became final. People assumed I could not bear living where the attack happened. I simply refused to spend the rest of my life moving through the dimensions of Rachel's plan. The hallway was where she watched Anthony enter. The living room was where she expected me to die. The kitchen was where she prepared dinner so the police would find a convincing scene. I kept my job, my savings, and the financial stability she had expected to inherit. Then I accepted a transfer to another city, bought a smaller place, and started again. I was not escaping. Escape suggests that something is chasing you. Rachel had no access to my life anymore. More than a year after sentencing, I requested one prison visit. Closure, I had learned, was simply the last decision made about a wound. Chell entered the visitation room wearing institutional clothes. Her hair was shorter. Her face looked older, not because of time alone, but because comfort had disappeared from it. She sat behind the glass and searched my expression for anger, grief, or weakness she could use. I placed a copy of our finalized divorce judgment against the glass. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she began to cry. "Do you remember who I used to be?" she asked through the phone. I studied her. I remembered the woman in our anniversary photograph. I remembered the cold kiss at the door. I remembered her hands closing around my wrist while Anthony crushed my throat. A quiet laugh escaped me. Not because anything was funny, but because I finally understood the absurdity of what she had attempted. She had believed she could erase me, collect the value of my labor, and step into my future as if I had built it for her. "You planned my funeral," I said. "I attended the death of your future instead." Her mouth opened, but I returned the phone to its cradle. I stood and left without looking back through the glass. Outside, the air was cold and clean. I drove home to a city Rachel had never visited, to a house she had never touched, and to a life she would never control. She tried to turn my death into her beginning. Instead, her plan became the end of everything she thought belonged to her. The life she tried to steal is still mine. And I do not think about her anymore.